Hey guys, Paul Harris here. So today I'm going to do a video on simple formulas on Excel. Now this video is part of a 5-part series that I've made because when I was in university or going into my first sort of finance role, I actually knew very little about Excel, and you needed to know a lot about Excel in order to get your job done efficiently, to know how to analyze data and that kind of stuff. So the first 2 videos in this series are on basic formatting using Excel, what the panel does. The next video was on shortcuts, how to get around documents quicker. I'll make 2 more videos after this. One will be on harder formulas and the next one will be on pivot tables and graphs. So those are what the 5 videos are going to be, but this one is on simple formulas. So this is the core of how you analyze certain information, how you sort of create formulas, what are the key ones that you're going to need to know in order to try and review data. So that's what we're going to make in today's video. Let's get into it. So here we are, we're in Excel, and you should be familiar with this table if you've seen the previous 2 videos of this series. But this is basically a table which shows you car owners, brands of those vehicles, and then certain information about, say, what they sold in terms of units this year, current year, and what the current year price is, and then also what the last year units are and the last year price. Now, there's clearly boxes here with data that's not available or that we're going to actually create. So we're going to create some data using simple formulas, and then we'll try and analyze some data using further formulas, and I'll just show you how you can put data together to try and summarize this information. Okay, so here we go. So whenever you're creating a formula, obviously you start with equals, and then there's certain formulas that are pretty standard. Okay, so obviously if you want to multiply things, you click the cell that you want, so E3, and you do this star button to create a multiplication. So that'll give me the current total price between those 2 values. If I wanted to add them, you do equals and then the cell you want plus another cell you want. And then if you wanted to do a subtract, you would obviously choose the cell and then use the minus, okay? That is what I want to do, is multiply this time. Now, I've shown you in the past, if you want to actually, instead of copying each formula down, you can just press this little box here and double click, and that creates the formula down. Now I've also shown you that if you want to just copy formulas across, you can do that. So I want last year's formula as well. Obviously I want a variance between last year and this year, so this is when I use the minus, so you can see last year's total, this year's total. That's what the variance is. And then if I want to create a percentage, you do the forward slash. So you do the difference forward slash last year, and that'll give me the percentage variance between last year and this year. And there we have some very, very simple formulas. If I go to the bottom of this page, you might want to add up now all the totals, or you might just want to add up all of it, to be honest. So now there's one way you could add up each of the cells. You could go onto each cell and go plus this cell, plus this cell, plus this cell. But this is when the formula comes in. So you do, to equals the entire column, you would do equals sum. So you literally write equals sum, open brackets, and now you select the cells that you want to add up. So if I go to the top of the page, scroll down, and then press enter, you add up the whole column. Now, if you want to drag that across, so it equals on each of these, you drag it across. Now I've added 4 more columns here, just to show you something that I think is important at this stage. We know how to do simple formulas like multiply, add, subtract, sum up an entire column. But another important aspect of Excel is being able to drag across formulas and to be able to freeze on certain cells as you drag across. So when you apply those simple formulas, you can freeze one column but then subtract as you pull across. Now, that might not make sense until I show you this. So I've added these 4 columns here, 2020, 2019, 2018, 2017. And a lot of time in finance, you want to know the variances between a set year, say 2020, and then previous years. So you want to take the 2020 and then subtract it against 2019. But then you might want to know what the 2020 difference is against 2018, or the 2020 difference is against 2017. So the way you do this is you create the formula as you would expect on the first column. So you do 2019 cell O3 minus N3, and that would create the variance. Now, obviously, if I pull that across, all the cells would pull across. So O would go to P and N would go to O. So if I pull this across, what would effectively happen is in column S, where I want to compare 2020 to 2018, I'm actually comparing 2018 to 2019. And if I go across one more time, you can see I'm now comparing, in this column, 2018 to 2017. But I want to continually compare previous years to 2020. So what you have to do is freeze cells. And you do this by clicking F4. And you hover over within the formula. So here it's N3. That's the one I want to freeze because that's the column with 2020. And I press F4. And you see how this $ gets created before the N and the 3. So I'm effectively freezing everything from N3. So I'm freezing going down and I'm freezing going right. If I just want to freeze the column, you can press F4 again, and you freeze on the column. So by freezing, I mean that there's a $ between either the letter or the number. And see what's clever here is you can freeze on either the cell, the row, or the column. But I want to freeze the column, so I'm doing $N3. And then I'm leaving the O3 blank, because what that'll effectively do, if I press enter and now drag across, is you can see now it says P3 minus N3, and the next one says Q3 minus N3, but it's fixing on the N cell. And the same thing if I then drag down, because I'm only freezing the column on N3, it won't freeze the number. See, it says N14, N20, N26. If I was just to freeze, I wouldn't want to do it in this instance, but if I was wanting to freeze the whole cell, you highlight the whole cell, you press F4 a number of times until you get to that, so $N, $3, that would freeze the cell. Now when I double click on this square here, and it does the formula all the way down, you can see I'm constantly just minusing against N3. And that's an extremely important principle in Excel when building up formulas, is knowing how to use that freeze column or freeze row. And you use that in a number of different ways that I'll get onto and probably get onto more within the harder formula section in my next video. It's also worth noting, just as a shorthand, if you have a load of different formulas within this formula section, you can highlight all of them and press F4, and you freeze both of them at the same time. So there we are, we've learned obviously how to subtract, minus, divide, sum, and now you can build those up going across columns or down rows. So if you can remember, I did that sum formula on the entire column. Now, one problem with the sum formula is that it doesn't work so well if you want to filter the table and see what the sort of subtotal is of the filtered area on that table. So if I apply a filter to this table, okay, and then I want to see, say, General Motors, you can see that this sum is still doing sum F3 to F50. Whereas the actual total here is 91,168. Now, what if you wanted to apply a sum that every time you filtered, you could see what the total would be? Well, in this situation, you use this formula called subtotal. So let's take the filter off this table. Okay, we go down and say we want subtotal here. So then if you wanted to apply a subtotal to the area, you go equals subtotal, open brackets 9, comma, then you apply the area in which you want a subtotal. So in this case, E3 to E50. You see, and it says 1450. See, it's the same in this instance as the grand total. The difference will be, though, is if I wanted to then apply a filter, say to General Motors, like we did before, you can see that the subtotal for current year total is 11 million, whereas the grand total is 81 million. So all of a sudden you can see that the subtotal is only adding up the area in which the filtered area is showing. Now, other formulas that I use quite a lot on a total aspect is if you want to average a column, you might not want to do this on this sort of data, but say I wanted to apply an average, you do equal average and highlight the column. You see in the average current units sold is 30. and you can scroll that across. Another one is count. So if you want to know how many items are in that table, and it's not as obvious as, say, as you can see here with such a small amount of data, you can just do equals count, and you can highlight that, and it'll say, look, 48 items in that table. Another total that I'll show you is product. So if you want to multiply several columns, you can use the term product. So if, say, I don't know why I'd want to do this, but say I wanted to multiply the entire column, you can highlight the entire column, press enter, and it shows you a ridiculously large number. And these are going to be even bigger. I mean, they're stupidly large numbers, but it might work in certain instances where you want to multiply certain rows, columns. That's just one formula that you can use instead of having to multiply everything separately. Another formula that you're going to use an awful lot is an if function, okay? So this is now getting on to where you want to use some sort of logic in Excel to pull out a certain criteria within a table of results. The way if function works is what you're basically doing is saying use a certain logic, so is one number bigger than another number, and if it is, show me this result, and if it isn't that logic, show me a different result. So if that logic's false, show me a different result. And this can be used in a whole manner of different ways, but in principle what you're doing is creating a formula going if, so equals if, open bracket, then you use the logical test. So in this instance, I might want to say, well, are the variance between last year and this year positive or a negative figure? So I can go, see this 844, it's negative. So I can select this cell. So I'm saying is K3, and I use the more than. Key, and I go, is it greater than 0? I actually want to do, is it greater than or equals to 0? If it is, maybe I want to show the figure, right? So if it is, maybe I want to show the figure, so K3. If it isn't, maybe I want to show 0. So then when I press enter, it shows me 0. What I'm basically doing here is directing the cell to show me a result based on a logical equation. So I'm going, is cell K3 greater than 0? If it is, show me what's in K3. If it isn't, just put blank there. The advantage of here is now I can drag down, and what I'm doing is I'm showing the formula all the way down the page. So now if I highlighted this column, so if I copy these across, it's showing me 18 million. Now what that's showing me is effectively everything in that column that's a positive number. You know, maybe you just want to see what all the positive numbers are in that column. And the reverse would be true if I switched around this more than sign and did the less than sign. And now I'm just going to pull out all the numbers here that are negative numbers. And if I look down below, it says 13,885,000, etc. That are negative numbers in that column. So that's quite useful. Now, the if function, unfortunately, is something that is infinite in terms of what you could do with it. So the principle is that when you're creating it, you do the logic first. So you use things like the more than sign, or for instance, if you want to do an if function with text, okay, I'll show you this one as well. If I want to say, is the owner BMW Group? Okay, and if the owner is BMW Group, show me the values in this table. So what I would do here is I would do equals again and do if, open brackets, then I click on the owner, which is cell B3. And so I could, for instance, this is one way of doing it, I could click on B3 again because I can see that B3 has BMW Group in, and then I can press F4 to fix it on that cell. And then I can go, if it does say BMW, show me what the current year total is. And if it isn't, show me 0. So that's one way you can do it, and then pull down. And you can see everything that says BMW Group in B3 to B5 is showing me the values. And you can see here it says B5 equals, and then I freezed cell on the one that I want to show the formula. But maybe you don't have a cell to mind that you can just go equals? Well, to show text in here, you have to use quotation marks and then type in the text that you're looking for. And that's how you incorporate text into a formula. Use those quotation marks. And then when you press enter, the exact same thing happens. And now I haven't used the text, no, I haven't used the cell now, I've used text to show me. And that's quite a useful one. Another thing that's quite useful is using these formulas that are called left, right, and middle. Okay, so what left effectively does is it picks out a cell that I've selected, and I might want to say, show me the first 3 letters of that cell. Okay, so it shows me everything to the left of that cell. So if I go left, you can see here, I'll type in the formula left, open brackets, click on BMW group, and now press 3. And it shows me the first 3 letters of that grouping. Why is that important? Well, you might end up, when you're reviewing a load of data where there's a huge amount of text in different cells, and you might just want to shorten that text down and then apply some more complicated formulas to sort of view what you're searching for. So if you knew that everything was the first 3 digits were like unique digits of that cell, you could pull out those left ones. The same thing would happen if you typed in right. So middle works in a slightly different way. You click equals mid, open bracket, select the text you want, and you go, right, how many digits from the start do you want to start picking up? So say I wanted to start with the W, I would click 3, because that's 3 digits in, and then it asks you to say how many digits from 3 in do you want to continue going. So say I wanted to go 4 more digits after that, close that, and it goes, see, it starts from W, and it goes 4 across, so it goes W space GR, and then if I pull that down, you can see you're getting all funny looking things here, because I'm basically selecting the middle. Now that's actually a very useful formula. The more you use Excel, you'll see how that actually becomes quite useful. Another thing that's quite useful is you get loads of data that you import from one Excel document into another Excel document. And often at times you find, particularly if you're trying to randomly copy and paste a PDF document into an Excel, which sounds like something you wouldn't really want to do, and it isn't. But what happens is it'll show BMW group like it shows here, but instead it'll have loads of spaces. So and then this might have loads of spaces as well. And you see the problem is it looks like it just says BMW group, but it doesn't. It says BMW group space 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 space. So I always find it funny when I'm making a video whether anyone at this point in time is still watching this video, and I'm still talking away, getting into it. Anyway, whatever. Look, it says BMW group and space space space. Now, it might say that the whole way down all the columns. You just don't know. But you want it all to be quite trimmed, which means it just starts with the first letter and ends with the last letter. So what you see in the cell is what's there. Well, the way you use that formula is this formula called trim, which you go equals trim, highlight the cell you want, which is BMW group space space space, and then you just press enter. And what it'll effectively do is create a text box, which if you now copy and paste values, which is unfortunately something you need to do, you can then see that the BMW group ends with BMW group and there's no longer any spaces afterwards. So it trims everything down, okay? That is quite useful. It comes in useful now and then. Another extremely useful tool to use is the AND abbreviated thingamajig, which on my Mac is actually shift+7. I think it's the same on a PC. Often at times what you want to do when you're using more complicated formulas is create unique IDs. What I mean by that is BMW is not unique because there's 3 of them. Okay, but what is unique is if I go equals BMW and BMW, which is the brand. So I'm doing owner and brand and then pressing enter. And you can see all of a sudden, annoyingly, there's like this, there's all these spaces, see? That's what's annoying about having spaces. You can see all of a sudden I've created BMW Group BMW. And then if I drag down, it says BMW Group Mini, BMW Group Rolls-Royce. Now that's very important for more complicated formulas that I'll do over in my next video, but that is something that's quite useful to know, is that to create it you just go equals and then you use as many cells as you want and go and afterwards, and it creates this separate text box. I've just thought of something else to do with the if functions, which unfortunately I didn't show before, which is if you want to use and or within your formulas. So say you have if here and you want to do and. So what you're effectively doing here is you're going equals if, but now you go and after the if. And now you can apply as many logic as you want. You can say the same logic as before, which is this column a positive number? But now you do a comma, and this is the second logic. Is that a positive number? And does this say BMW? And then I'm going to close bracket, then press comma, and select the current year total. So what I'm saying is if that's true, if both those logics are true, provide me the answer, which is the current year total, and then press comma, and then if it's not true, show me 0. And what you'll find is actually the only one in the table that is true, and therefore should provide a value, is the first set of values. And that's basically how you add and to an if function. So you can get an if function going, and then keep adding different logical sequences to produce a set of results. And you know what, I'm going to leave it there. There's other formulas I wanted to show, but I think this video has gone quite long. I think there's a lot of content there anyway. So hopefully you enjoyed that video. The next video is going to be on more difficult formulas. So how you can sort of take this table and abbreviate it by showing, say, sum if formulas or VLOOKUPs and all that kind of stuff. So that's what I'm going to use in the next set of videos. Hopefully that was useful when reviewing table and adding if functions and sums and subtotals, etc., etc. So lots of useful stuff there. Hopefully that was interesting enough. I'll see you in the next video. Thanks for watching.